guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I am going to be talking about the books that I think should have been nominated for the Goodreads Choice Awards. If you don't know what the Goodreads Choice Awards is, they are book awards that Goodreads puts on every single year, and they have a bunch of different genre categories, and books get nominated and there's a voting process, and then at the end Goodreads declares what are the best books of the year. There's a lot of, I don't know if I would say controversy around the Goodreads Awards. It's not the most fair awards. It's basically well known that it's just a popularity contest. Goodreads is very cryptic about the ways in which they choose the books that are going to be nominated. There's a lot of things that year after year I don't like about the awards. One of them being that I don't think an actual human is curating these nominees. It's very much like based on Goodreads algorithm. So a lot of times books are nominated in the wrong categories. Non-romance books are nominated as romance books, or fantasy books are put in other categories. Like, books are constantly put into the wrong categories. And then also in their opening round with their first batch of nominees, it's pretty much down to popularity, but it's not based on which books have been read the most or rated the highest. It's just based on what books have been added to people's shelves the most. So a million people could mark a certain book as to be read, and only 2 people could have actually read that book. But because so many people marked it as to be read, it probably would be nominated, right? And again, it just comes down to like a popularity contest. A lot of people vote for books that they haven't read just because they like that author. But what I really hate about this year in particular is that they took off the write-in option. So normally at the very opening start of the awards, they have a selection of the nominees, but then we are able to write in our own selections and nominate our own books. This year, I don't know why they decided to get rid of that. The write-ins were always kind of more so the illusion of us having a say, but every once in a while there would be a book that was written in so much, Goodreads had to put it in the final round. But this year, I guess they just said, fuck it. We're not even gonna pretend to care what people want. So I decided to make this video and tell you guys the books that I think should have been nominated. And these are the books that I probably would have written in for each category. So I have 8 books here. All of these books were published in 2021, so they fit within the criteria for the Goodreads Choice Awards. I don't have a book for every single category because a lot of their categories are just ones that I don't read books in, or the books that I would have chosen were already nominated. For example, I don't have anything for the sci-fi category because the book that I would have nominated is Project Hail Mary, which was already in the nominees. So I'm going to start with the thriller that I would have nominated. I thought that the thriller selection this year was so bizarre. I don't know. There was a lot of thrillers that I thought were gonna be on there that just weren't. And then number 1 that I was sure would be on the nominees was For Your Own Good by Samantha Downing. I think that Samantha Downing's previous books have been nominated, so that's why I was like surprised that this one wasn't. This is one of my favorite thrillers that I read this year. It was such a like fun mystery, very much gave me Joe Goldberg vibes. I feel like that's something that everybody says about this book. It follows a teacher at this prestigious academy, and he believes that he knows best for his students, and he does things that he thinks are helping them or like trying to teach them lessons, but he does them in very fucked up ways and he crosses the line. He's a little bit unhinged. This was just like a really fun book. I feel like I categorize this more as like a dark comedy than a straight up thriller, but this definitely would have been the book that I would have written into the thriller category. So the next category that I have 2 books that I would have probably written in is the horror section. I actually was pleasantly surprised with the horror nominees this year. The one book that I thought was gonna be snubbed completely was A Dowry of Blood, which is probably my favorite book of the year, and that was nominated. I was so shocked. That's what I voted for, and I probably would have kept my vote for that and not written something in. I don't know if previously you could have voted for something and written something in, but I do have 2 books that I think should have been nominated. The first one is Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca. I'm very surprised that this was not nominated because I feel like if there's one horror that I saw the most conversations about or the most people talking about, it was this one. And that totally makes sense because this is a very like shocking book. It's a book that you can really like talk about, and I feel like a lot of people were reading just for like the shock value of it, but I really loved it. It was disturbing, it was disgusting, it gave what it was supposed to give, it was horror, it was horrific. I'm very surprised that this one wasn't nominated. And then the other book that I was very surprised wasn't nominated is The Death of Jane Lawrence by Caitlin Starling, although I don't know if this one came out in time. They do something weird with like November and December books. They don't really put on the list, or sometimes they do, I don't know. So I don't know if it came out in time to have even been an option. Caitlin Starling's first book, The Luminous Dead, was nominated the year that it came out. So I was kind of surprised that this one wasn't. The Goodreads choice is known for their repeat authors, but I loved this book. I haven't even really talked about it, I think. On my channel, I gave it 4 stars. It was everything that I wanted. I feel like this was a book that was like, not many people are going to like, but there's a certain population of people that I feel like would really absolutely love this, and I happen to fall within that. It is a gothic historical horror with magic, and all of those elements into one book just made for like a perfect read for me. So this is definitely a book that I would have liked to see on the list, but since it is so hit or miss, I feel like I understand why it's not, but I definitely would have written it in. The next book I have, I don't really know which category that I would write this in for. It is a YA book, and their YA categories don't make sense to me. They only have 2 young adult categories. One of them is like young adult fiction, and then young adult fantasy and sci-fi. And then so anything that's not those 2 things, I don't really know where to classify them. So the book that I would have nominated for either of the young adult categories is Our Last Echoes by Kate Alice Marshall. This is a YA horror, and Kate Alice Marshall is like becoming one of my favorite authors. I loved her first book, Rules for Vanishing, and this book was amazing as well. I think if you're looking into getting into horror, these 2 books are really, really great introductions into the genre. And YA horror honestly does not get paid its dues. Some of my absolute favorite horror books are young adult, but I feel like people totally overlook them. This book is about a woman whose mother went missing when she was a child in Alaska. So she's now grown up, and she knows that there's something more going on to her mother's death or disappearance. So she travels back to Alaska, to this small little island, and is investigating what happened. I don't want to say any more about this book because my absolute favorite elements of the books are spoilers, so there's not much that I can really say about the plot, but honestly just like go into it blind. It is so fantastic. The horror elements of it are amazing. So yeah, I don't really know where I would have nominated this. Probably, I guess, in the young adult fantasy sci-fi category, but like, I don't know, maybe they need to make a YA horror category because their YA categories just don't cover enough. So the next book that I would have nominated in the fantasy category, and that is Across the Green Grass Field by Shannon McGuire. So this is the 6th book in the Wayward Children series. Now, was this my favorite book in the Wayward Children series? No, it's probably my least favorite. However, any year that Shannon McGuire is not nominated, just cancel the whole awards. Just pack it up, send it home, the awards are canceled. Even this being my least favorite in the series, I still gave it 5 stars. This is like my absolute favorite series, so I 100% would have written this in. But I guess I understand why it's not nominated. It is the 6th book in a series, and I feel like the farther down you get into series, the less people are reading them. So maybe it's not as popular anymore. I don't know. I would have nominated it. And then the last one that we have is the romance category. So I actually filmed, I have a vlog that'll be coming out in maybe like a week or 2. And in that vlog, I reacted to the romance nominees and I gave all my thoughts and opinions because I feel like if there's one category in the Goodreads choice that is just the absolute worst, it's the romance category. Goodreads does not know what a romance book is, and it is offensive. And especially this year in particular, every single nominee for the romance category, maybe minus like 2, to me looked like the exact same book, which is frustrating because romance has so many different like subgenres that are not recognized. So I have 3 romance books here. None of them are contemporary that I would have loved to see nominated. So the first 2 are historical romances. The first one that I would have written in is a book that I actually just finished today. I had to change my list a little bit because I did have The Duke Heist by Erica Ridley, which is the first book in the Wild Winchester series. It came out earlier in the year, but the second book, The Perks of Loving a Wallflower, came out last month, and I just finished reading that this morning. And this is the one that I would have written in. It is a female-female historical romance following this woman named Tommy, who comes from a family of orphans who were all adopted by this wealthy man, and each of them has like a very unique skill. And Tommy's skill is that she is a master of disguises. She's really great at putting on disguises and like becoming an entirely new person. I just loved this book. I loved it so much. It's probably one of my favorite sapphic romances, and the fact that it's a historical romance too, it was just everything. So I definitely would have nominated this one. The other historical romance that I really loved this year that I would have liked to see nominated is Waiting for a Scot Like You by Eva Leigh. This is a romance about an older heroine. I think she's like in her early 40s, and a younger man, and she's a widow. She lost her husband, and they never really had like a good marriage. She was never like sexually satisfied in her marriage. So now that she's a widow and she's been granted a lot of freedoms as a woman because of being a widow, she's decided to like have her spring break wild life, and she wants to go to an orgy. But her friends think that going to the orgy is going to be dangerous, so they plead for her to take a bodyguard. And so she takes this Scottish man with her, and they end up falling in love. I just really loved this book. I loved the idea of like following this older heroine who is like finally experimenting in her sexuality and her freedoms in life, and it was just such a great historical romance. So then the last romance that I would have 100% written in is probably one of my favorite romances of the year, and that is Her Soul to Take by Harley Laroux. This is I don't know if it's paranormal or supernatural, but it is about a demon. So the main character is a demon ghost hunter. She has a YouTube channel where she tries to find paranormal entities, and she travels back to her hometown that she has no idea this, but her hometown happens to be like a hot spot for demons and cults and dark rituals and a dead god. And while she's there, she meets this guy who is a demon, and he immediately is like obsessed with her, and he wants to take her soul and drag her back to hell with him. This book was everything that I wanted. It had the best horror elements and the best romance elements, and the plot was great, the world was great. There was some really creepy, like horrific creatures in it. There was this whole plot about a cult and sacrificial rituals. It was just fantastic, and I completely would have wanted to see this nominated. So those are the books that I would have nominated for the Goodreads Choice Awards. Definitely let me know in the comments if there's any books that you read this year that you absolutely loved that you think should have been nominated. I'm definitely interested to see what happens in the final round for some of these categories. I think that the next round opens up tomorrow. So maybe when this video is up, you guys will already know before me. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!